Hey everybody, it's Dave Duford here at Final Expense Agent Mentor, where I help agents like you and salespeople like you succeed in whatever it is that you're selling. So the purpose of this video is to give you my 7 top tips for sales training for beginners. So the reason I'm putting this video together is that I train agents in the insurance field, specifically more or less in the final expense field, but other insurance related sales niches as well. And I like to do videos that help explain how to make more of a connection with your prospects to help them buy what they really need. And I think part of the reality of sales is that there is a perception you probably have of sales training or of sales in general. You know, you probably have watched Glenn Ross. You've probably have seen The Boiler Room. And the perception Hollywood gives of salespeople is that they're all hucksters. They're all snake oil salesmen trying to divorce you from your money in some unethical manner. And while there's people out there who do this kind of thing, the truth is that sales doesn't have to be that way. Sales doesn't have to be high pressure, aggressive, and emotionally jarring to both you and your prospect. Sometimes really the best salespeople out there are low key. They're educationally driven. They conduct themselves in such a manner where they're on the side of the client, helping them assist to buy a product. And so what I want to bring to you today is that alternative, really, I think, real-world perspective of what makes a long-term successful salesperson successful. And by doing that, what I'm going to do is give you some sales training tips as a beginner to help reorient your mind about what sales is all about and how it is an actual honest profession that you can actually help people in ways that no other person can. And so let's get started. So the first tip here, a lot of people won't agree with me, but I do, is that sales primarily, first of all, is not about what you say, how you say it, the sequence in which you say it, how many closes you attempt to do. Sales is first and foremost a numbers game. Now, you may contest that to an extent if you're experienced, and that's totally fine. What you'll find is, however, is that there ain't no sales without people to see, especially in the insurance business, for example. We need to see people in order to successfully sell, right? And so a lot of what your job is as a salesperson is, number one, achieving your sales quota, okay? But even further than that, in order to achieve that big goal, you have to dissect it into weekly and daily goals, which is primarily established around how many sales calls that you make. If you can hit your sales calls on a weekly basis and your sales training capabilities, your technique, if you will, is moderately okay, you'll find that you'll be in the top 20% fairly quickly if you can hit your numbers consistently every week, week in, week out. So what you should focus on as a beginner in sales is to look at this business as a numbers game first and foremost. Figure out whatever it is that you're selling, how people get presentations. Learn that there's probably a system involved in order for you to be successful. And for example, in Final Expense, the type of life insurance we sell, primarily what we do is generate leads via direct mail. And you can derive how many presentations on average based on how many leads that you get. So there's a system that helps you get in front of prospects that you pay money for. And every business has something like that. And the salesman's goal is to hit whatever that numerical goal is on a presentation base on a weekly basis in order to hit that long-term goal of production. This is where I would say, as a trainer myself for 5 years now, 80 to 90% of agents and salespeople too struggle with. It's not how many rebuttals do they know. It's not connecting with a client. A lot of people will say, I do great when I'm in front of a client or a prospect. But what they lack is the capability to consistently see people and deliver presentations. And if an agent or a salesperson can overcome that and they can be consistent, everything starts to click. Everything gets to become great again. And so if you're new to this business of sales, understand first and foremost, your objective should be first and foremost, see people. If you don't know all the answers, that's totally fine. You don't need to. You got people in your office that can probably help you out. You can work as a dual together type of situation. But see people to keep your pipeline full, to keep you always doing business, and let that be your first and foremost goal, because otherwise you're going to be in the 80% who struggle because they just simply don't. Number two reason is that the sale is on you first. So a lot of people who get involved in sales think, oh man, I'm going to sell for this brand name Fortune 500 company. Everybody knows it's the greatest type of product available, or everybody knows it's the greatest type of company out there. Well, here's the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that is just not true. You see, most people don't know anything about the company you represent. They may have heard of them before, but for a scrutinizing buyer, they're not going to just take your word on it. They're going to test your theory that your product that you're selling, your service you're selling, is actually going to benefit that company. So you cannot take that assumption as true. It's not. In fact, what buyers look for, first and foremost, is who they are dealing with, what they're actually like, how their personality is, the knowledge base that they know. And they take all these different factors that they just accumulate through the process of meeting with the salesperson to determine if this is a person that's representative of someone that I would want to trust. Okay? So please completely discount the importance of your particular company you represent. It is not important at all. There are multiple examples of rinky-dink companies that nobody's ever heard of that have outsold juggernauts in the business. Why? Because the people who represent them, they may represent a great product, but they do a great job, again, seeing the people, but also demonstrating to the prospect that they know what they're talking about, that they've got a solution that solves the problem to whatever problem that they're having on a corporate level or on a retail level, business to consumer. So present yourself well, connect with your client. I promise you that is way more important than any kind of brand name recognition your company brings. Number 3, great salespeople ask great questions. Okay, so you're probably thinking as a beginning salesperson, well, I've got to be really convincing. I've got to be charismatic. I've got to be the kind of person that's got to be able to say something witty all the time. It's not the case. I personally, I've been in sales for 15 years. I'm an introvert by nature. Okay, I'm a homebody. I used to be afraid to call the pizza man. All right, that's who I am. Kind of still who I am to an extent. But what I realized growing up is I learned how to ask good questions and listen. You see, your prospects don't want to be convinced. Okay, people hate to be sold. They love to buy, but they hate to be sold. The way that you get someone convinced to buy from you, however, is by asking good questions to uncover what makes them tick. What are their motivations? What type of problems are they having? And how would they like to solve those problems? Do they think it's solvable? What kind of commitment do they have to it? And to do more as an approach to sales as an investigative approach than a persuasive type approach. The beauty in asking great questions is that when you ask great questions, the people who are answering them are totally thrilled, excited, and impressed at what you seem to be as a great conversationalist, but also as somebody who demonstrates knowledge and understanding about trying to get the bottom of problems that they may be experiencing. So you'll create a great connection with your prospect. In fact, you'll develop a lot of rapport with your prospect just by asking them a series of really good questions. And so if there's anything that you can take away from this recording, is you've got to ask great questions. There's always specific questions that each particular industry and sales involved in that is going to be representative that you should always ask. So like with life insurance sales, when we sell burial insurance, I ask them, what were your thoughts, concerns when you sent back this card? Because that's how the interview begins. I ask them, why do you want a life insurance policy? I ask them, do you want to be buried or cremated? That's always a thought these people have. What would you like your life insurance policy to do for you? What would happen if you died tomorrow, seeing that you don't have any life insurance? And just sit back and listen and allow these people to go full bore into whatever their situation is. What's great about it is you get emotional responses. And it's not logic that sells, it's emotion. Logic justifies the sale, but it originates with the emotion. And good questions will bring out the emotional impact of whatever it is the problem they're having in their lives is causing them. So ask great questions, very important. Number 4, prequalification is key. This is true whether you sell B2B or business to consumer. You should not look at sales in the classical way where you go in and you pump and dump and you pitch them and you follow the old adage, if I got to hear 7 no's before I get a yes. I've said over 3,000 sales presentations in my life. I've never ever done that in my life. That is the inverse method of selling. Whereas the reverse method, or I should say the right way to sell, is that you want to figure out if the person across the table from you meets all the criteria in order for you to buy from that person. It's really important. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So in selling life insurance, there's a couple of criteria for someone to be a buyer. Most commonly, the pre-qualification routine will ask questions about health. And so what will happen here is that if you sit across from a client who wants, let's say, a term life insurance plan, they're adamant about it, they want to hand you money over to buy from you, but you find out they've got an incurable disease that's a knockout question with most term insurance companies, and you can't find a company that will do it. This person is disqualified, at least from term insurance. But you need to have that conversation up front with them, not after you've submitted the application and completed a 40-page application, got their hopes up, sat around for 6 to 8 weeks for an approval to find it was declined. You need to have an honest mano conversation right away to figure out, hey, look, this is not going to go through. Can you accept an alternative instead? And even if they say no, you've actually won because you haven't gone through the movements of wasting your time chasing a specter that can never be caught, which is an unqualified prospect converting it into a prospect. And again, a lot of people get hung up on prospects and they try to turn somebody who's not qualified to becoming qualified because they don't have, again, it goes back to the numbers game. They don't have a pipeline. They're not constantly filling their pipeline with new prospects. And they hang on these suspects, as they really are, and try to justify them to their managers that, hey, I got the big fish, it's coming through, when they really end up getting declined or it doesn't go through or the case never gets sold because it was never really meant to be there in the first place. Had they had asked the right questions up front, it would have been a different story whatsoever. So as a new salesperson, you really need to focus on asking solid questions. Again, it goes back to solid questions. Pre-qualification, in a sense, is about asking solid questions. You need to know what the client's looking for, what their limitations on what's acceptable to them, and then decide on what you see if it's even possible. And if it's a low odds deal, you need to leave and go find somebody else who will be much more likely to buy, and the streamline in purchasing will be that much smoother, as opposed to forcing a square peg into is it a round peg in the square hole? Square peg in a round hole. There we go. You don't want to do that. It's frustrating. It's a waste of your time, and you'll say sales sucks. All right, number 5 here. Make the complex simple. Yes, I love this one. So if you listen to Rush Limbaugh, you'll commonly catch him say something like, what I do here on the program is I make the complex simple. And it's true. Rush Limbaugh, one reason he's so successful in the radio business or in the talk business is because he can connect with a very huge audience of people who are everyday normal people and explain otherwise complicated problems or issues as it faces the political nation in a context which is easy to understand and digestible by not only intelligent people, but regular old people, okay? I'm not trying to say he's great for smart people and dumb people or anything like that. It's just he can take complex concepts and make it simple. And why I'm mentioning Rush Limbaugh and his approach to teaching, because that's what he really does, is he's teaching and giving his perspective. When you are selling, you have got to do the same thing too. You have got to take whatever it is that you're selling and simplify it down to the brass tacks and make it very, very simple. When we present a product to a prospect, there's generally a couple of things that make up the biggest reasons why they need to buy. This is kind of the funny thing about car sales. The worst thing you can do in car sales, with some buyers especially, is go through a litany of features that do not matter. And I believe the car business is bad for doing this. They don't really think too much about what makes someone buy. And what you'll find is there are some buyers who buy a minivan because it's got real nice cup holders and the seat warmer is nice and comfortable, or the seat feels comfortable. They don't care about the horsepower. They don't care about the torque. They don't care about some of the other stuff. They care about a few main things that really impress them and fit and solve some kind of problem in their lives. So when it comes to sales presentations, we can't get so far gone in our product that we make the complex even more complex, because eventually, figuratively, our prospects' eyes will glaze over. They'll look at the product. They're trying to understand how it works and how it'll fit in, and they'll say, I just need to think about it. It's not really, I don't know about this. I need to bring it up to committee, or we need to think about it, and we'll call you back. The easier you can make your product understandable, the better you will be. And this is true even for your white-collar prospects, your intelligent prospects. They don't want a litany of different features and benefits. I do this all the time. Just tell me what this does. Spell it out in 10 words or less, and then I'll tell you if I like it or not. And that's what a lot of these top people do, especially in big businesses. They don't want to know all the details. They just want to know, does it work? What does it do? Let's do it or not. They want to make a decision. So don't think this is something that's for only the unsophisticated buyers. This is a truism of all sales. Take the main things that your clients or prospects are interested in your product. It's only like 3 to 5 things, and craft your presentation around those. Better yet, learn what your actual prospects face-to-face want, and then present to them only the things that they mention that they find interesting or they find important to have in their particular business or as a particular part of their life. Number 6, you may have heard of this thing called closing the deal. Perhaps you have. It's really not that big of a deal. I think closing, again, traditional sales training is all about closing. I think I've got a book on the bookshelf back here, 100 different ways to close. You talk to any professional salesperson that's been doing this, that have survived, has done well for themselves, they may have 1 or 2 different sales close approaches. That's it. Like for me in the life insurance business, I do what's called the good, better, best close. I show 3 prices to a budget range they agree to. I make a recommendation based off of what they said they wanted earlier on, and I ask them which one works best. That's all I do. That's what I do every single day when I sell a life insurance plan. And it's likely that you don't need to be any more complicated than just saying, okay, great. How would you like to proceed? Would you like to proceed? That's all you really need to do. You don't need to learn all these closes, because here's the thing. When you get really good in sales, okay, and you're a beginner looking in, when you get really advanced in sales, the sale has been made already up to that point. You just need to push it through the final yard to get the touchdown. But 99% of that has been done through the effective pre-qualification, establishing trust with the prospect, demonstrating the effectiveness of your product, matching what they demonstrated as being important to them in their business, and showing proof of why this particular product solves the problems that they're having. At this point, if you can demonstrate all this, if you can show proof, if you can connect the client, they're already sold on it. You just need to say, okay, here's how you start. Would you like to do this? That's it. So closing is not that big and not that important. I would spend the least amount of time learning how to close, despite how many videos there are on closing. Everybody thinks closing is the greatest thing in the world. It's not. It's not a big deal. Forget closing. Spend time learning your product, connecting with your prospect, and figuring out what problems they have so you can solve them. And then last but not least, as my friend in the business, Chris Westfall, who sells Medicare supplements, is a millionaire, probably many times over at this point, has done a fantastic job. His old saying is, the fortune is in the follow-up. So understand that you may not make sales right away, depending on what kind of models you're involved in. You may be involved in a corporate setting where you're selling larger businesses, where the pipeline for sales closing is 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. You're going to have to create a relationship and continually follow up with these prospects. It's not enough just to say, well, I tried and I can't go back. Now, that's contrasted with businesses that are inherently one-call closes, like life insurance sales, generally speaking, is a one-call close. It can be multi-call, but mostly it's one call. So the fortune is in the follow-up. I'll give you a quick story. My dad was in he was in chemical sales back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. He sold his business to Ecolab at 49, retired. Anyways, when I was talking to him about his clients, he would sell chemical disinfectants and cleaners to very large corporations and poultry processing facilities, primarily his niche market. And it would take them years sometimes to get in. You know, they would call, they'd have an existent chemical supplier, they were happy with it. But the reason he kept seeing these people, and he'd go out to lunch with the factory managers, learn what they're doing, just stay in contact, because it's only a matter of time till one of these vendors screws up. They don't bring in the right chemicals. they screw up a multitude of times. The buyers at the facilities are pissed. They get angry because in their business, when they've got to shut down a production line, that's money that they're not making, right? Because they've got to disinfect it because there's some sort of chemical or some sort of bacteria that they got to figure out where it's at and clean it out so that we don't get sick eating their food, and there's a huge PR crisis. So it's a huge problem that if that happens, and if that happens enough times, well, then at this point, they've set all this time up contacting these people, sitting down with them, meeting them, that they're going to call up my dad's company and say, hey, we're having a big problem. Can you come in here and help us out? And now's the time, boom, to act. But that wouldn't have been done if you gave up on the first call, right? It is a multi-call period of time over many years that eventually, boom, the company finally messed up, and now's your time to act. And that's how Dad was able to build a 250-plus business, have salespeople all over America that did very successful. And that's how you can be too. You got to look at sales as a career, not as a checkpoint in your life that you're just here because you can't find another job. You got to treat it seriously. It's a completely unique, different type of profession than others. It's all about connections with people. It's all about solving people's problems and being of service to people. And it's all about, and it always goes back to this, it's a numbers game. Every element of what I talked about here has some sort of connection to seeing the people, to doing sales presentations consistently on a regular basis. And if you're a beginner, this is the most important takeaway from this. So to conclude, what is some basic tips for sales, 7 tips for sales, new salespeople getting started in the business. Number 1, sales is a numbers game. 2, the sale is on you first, not the company. So you got to sell yourself first. Don't ever discount that. 3, great salespeople ask great questions. You got to be good at asking questions. And related to that, number 4, pre-qualification is really how sales is really manifested in a successful way this time and age. Number 5, you have to make the complex simple. Your product may be complex and have a lot of features, but your buyers really only care about 3, 4, or 5 different benefits. Go for the jugular on those 3 to 5 benefits. You'll make more sales that way than if you just blow them over, baffle them with bullshit, as I say. Number 6, closing is not a big deal. Close, ask for the sale, but don't spend too much time worrying too much about that. Business will close itself if you do everything else earlier correct. And number 7, fortune is in the follow-up. No matter what kind of business you're in, always keep a list of people to follow up to keep your pipeline full, and you'll find that your business will be successful selling. I hope this was helpful to you. Again, my name is David Duford at at Final Expense Agent Mentor. That was my other website. But let me show you my book if you're interested. It's called The Official Guide to Selling Final Expense Insurance. If you're curious about how the final expense business work, I've kind of mentioned it a few times here and there. I have a book on Amazon. You can purchase it. Basically is my whole sales system inside of a 200-page book. You can also buy it on my website. It's at feagentmentor.com. Click on the link at the top. It says buy the book or something like that. And it's an ebook, and it's a little less expensive if you want to do that. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't. I do videos like this usually 4 to 5 times a week, all about different sales training topics. Like the video as well. My name is Dave Duford, logging off. See you later.